Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nugget News. Today I want to talk about trading entries and exits and answer the question, is it too late to get in? I get this question so often when we start to talk about a coin or a trade that we're looking at and it starts to move in the right direction and people just saying, hey, is it too late? Are you still bullish? Is it going to keep going up? And that shows me that these people don't have their own plan. They haven't really done their own research. So I want to walk you through how I build a thesis and the different types of trading plans and so on. And we use a mix of fundamentals, technical analysis, and market sentiment or human psychology to gauge where a coin is at and where I think it's going. So to start off with, I recently did a video for our members talking about the difference between a long-term investor, trend trading or cycle trading, swing trading, day trading if you're going to beat the computer all day, scalping when you're just looking for really little breaks, and then arbitrage, making money off the differences between exchanges and prices and so on. So you have to decide what type of investor you're going to be, develop your own plan, your own style to fit your lifestyle and your needs and the time you have available, develop a couple of strategies and stick to them so you have some sort of technique and some sort of trade plan and rules that you can stick to rather than so many people that just jump in blindly. And the final thing I want to mention is that as we go down these shorter time frames, dopamine, that adrenaline rush, becomes something that people get hooked to. Dopamine is the chemical that's responsible for addiction and that sort of thing, and it's the chemical that gives us that rush. And a lot of people do get, an addiction to that day trading, that feeling, and it can be just as painful on the flip side when you lose a lot of money and consistently keep coming back, feeling that the market owes you something. But anyway, let's get in and talk about how I build a thesis. To start off with, the first thing we have to be aware of is the overall market. So on a day like today, Bitcoin's just gone up $1,000, everything's going up. You have to say, well, geez, on the shorter time frames, it's probably not the best time to get in. The good time to get in the shorter time frame was yesterday or a few days before if I was doing a swing trade and whatnot. So always been mindful of the overall market environment. Are we in a bear market? Are we in a bull market? What's Bitcoin likely to do? Is my coin going to track Bitcoin, or has it got some news that's so good I think it's going to go up no matter what the Bitcoin price is doing? Now, where I start to do my research and build my fundamental thesis is from these different, websites or social medias, chat rooms and so on. So I'm just going to use Enigma as an example here because we've got a trade on this one I'm going to talk about at the end. But a lot of the chit chat happens in their Telegram, their Discord, and this is the same for all projects. They might put out little tweets with bits of news, and then we can check Reddit and the bigger Reddits, the cryptocurrency Reddits and so on to see what's happening. And Medium is normally a place where they put out really good articles and it keeps you up to date, where you can do some thorough research. And then from there, we know that the hype builds in the Facebook groups and on crypto Twitter, and then all the way to the news outlets when there's a big story. So by the time it filters its way through these smaller channels up to the big news outlets, then I know that everyone's aware of it. It's kind of already priced in. I know that I'm not in early. Whereas lately I've been reading some great stuff on Medium, and I just know that there's not many eyeballs on that and that I'm in really early. And that's how I can start to build a thesis, and then I'll head over to the charts. So let's dive in and have a look at our example. Binance fundamental analysis. We did this for you guys a couple of months ago, and I said this Binance launch pad where they're going to launch different projects, it's going to have a huge demand for BNB, just like we saw huge demand for ETH with ICOs. Now, not many people were talking about this at the time. It wasn't all over crypto Twitter. It wasn't in many Facebook groups. I knew that I was fairly early with my my thesis, and so then I'll head over and I'll start to check things like Google Trends, how many people are talking about this. And again, you get a feel where a couple of months ago, this was at all-time low for Google Trends, Google searches for Binance Coin. Now we've had a real pickup and everyone's starting to get excited, and this is priced in. So when I head over to the charts, we can see that Binance had a terrible run like just about everything. And when I posted this in January, it's down here in the $6 range. It hasn't really taken off yet. And then people start to talk about this. We see YouTubers start to make videos about initial exchange offerings, and this is where the hype really built up. So you have to be aware that If you miss that first break, maybe you look for something really simple like pulling back into the daily moving averages, and that happened on a number of occasions where you got a better entry. Now, this has since gone to $20, and if we look at this daily chart, you have to be aware that we're now overbought on the daily RSI and overbought on the weekly. The RSI has gone from oversold to overbought, and in the short-term time frame, you have to be aware that this is not a good time to get in. You have become the dumb money, the herd that are chasing this trade when the smart guys were doing their research back here and building that thesis. It's now played out in full, and you don't want to be this person that buys the top. I'd have to say the weight of averages would suggest that this is going to pull back somewhere into the moving averages over the coming days or weeks. But longer term, if you still like Binance, that's where you have to put on your hat and say, look, I'm a longer term investor. Whereas if you're a day trader, you might even be looking for a short. Say, hey, this is so overbought, I think it's going to go down. So again, you have to decide what type of trader you're going to be. Build your thesis about has that news been priced in or not. The next example I'll give was a follow-up where we said Binance Coin has run really hard. All these other exchange tokens are going to do the same thing if they start to have these IEOs on their own launch pads. And I made this video for you guys last year, but recently we posted that this demand was going to take off. And again, no one was talking about this on Reddit, Facebook groups, Twitter, these IEOs once they started moving. So, BIX token has gone from around 11 cents only a few weeks ago, absolutely taken off now to over 55 cents. So again, if you miss that initial spike, back to the moving averages, back to the moving averages. Maybe you want to get out a fib retracement tool and wait for it to pull back a little bit. On the 4-hour chart, maybe you zoom in and say, hey, once it gets overbought, I'm going to wait for it to pull back on my RSI. So again, you have to have some sort of strategy. Too many people just fly into this completely blind, and they end up chasing and doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. The next one I'll talk about was Engine. And again, I was reading about this on Medium, doing my fundamental research. In our fundamentals group, we bounce ideas off each other. And this was one that I shared saying, I think this wallet is really slick. It's really friendly. It's got Kyber and Bancor, some great projects built into it for swapping tokens. You can store non-fungible tokens. You can store collectibles. I think this wallet launch is going to be a reasonably big deal. So that was my thesis. We then look around now and everyone is talking about this. Every YouTuber is making a video about this. It was all over Twitter, Reddit, Facebook groups. And that's when you have to say, geez, I was early when you get in here when no one's talking about it. Now it's had this huge jump from 4 cents to 26 cents. That is the wrong time to be getting in. Again, if you missed that initial launch, maybe you zoom into the time frames if you're a trader, wait for a pullback into the averages. You're going to get that on a number of occasions. And if you're a longer term trader, maybe you have your stop loss. Say, look, I'm just going to ride this up until it loses these moving averages. Again, something to be aware of is how to know if this was just the initial spike or it's going to continue higher. And you can use those stop loss rules, trading rules, but again, it's that fundamental picture of what's going on around me in the community. Just because it's had a good jump, you have to say, well, gee, Samsung adding a wallet is a pretty big deal. This is probably going to go a lot higher. If no one was talking about this, is everyone going to price this in just a few days? No, this is probably going to take a few weeks to really price in all this good news. So again, it's trying to be aware of what's happening around you and getting a feel for this. And I guess that comes with experience a little bit as well. The next one I'll talk about is Digitex, and this is an example of a project that was pretty excited and hyped about 3 years ago, but really hasn't had much excitement since. So again, I'm aware that no one's really talking about it. A lot of people think that Digitex is dead, and then it turns out that after 3 years, they'll be launching their governance platform. This is the gold-backed project, and you do get governance and say with that token. So if we zoom out and look at the chart, this one's been absolutely crushed from $600. It had a spike up to $1,200 on some exchanges, but absolutely crushed down to $15 or so. So we know that it's been a victim of the bear market. It's down. It hasn't really had any good news lately. Now, I still think this one probably has a bit further to run because it's only gone from the $15 to the $20 mark, and I think this is actually pretty good news once this starts to get priced in by the market and people realize that they can have a say in what happens on this platform. It's been a very powerful use case for Maker that built-in governance. So again, this is one that I'm probably holding on. We haven't had a daily close below these moving averages yet. I'm just being patient. Maybe it doesn't take off, but at the moment, there's no one talking about this in the Facebook groups, on Reddit, any of the news sites. And again, that's what I'm sort of being patient and waiting for. The final one was Enigma, and this is an example of a project that has nodes where you need to buy a lot of tokens to get a node. And again, no one was aware that this was going to really be the case. No one was talking about it. If you followed the projects that you like closely in their channels and the mediums and so on, this is how I learned about this back in December and started sharing that I think this is going to be a pretty big deal once they finally launch. Enigma got a lot of hype last year, but again, that had since all settled down. So again, I build my thesis. I then head over and look at the charts. Look, they just absolutely capitulated down to 20 cents from, nearly $9 there around that announcement where they said, hey, we are finally going to be launching our mainnet and have nodes and all that sort of thing. So you're getting in early. We then see signs of life with big bull volume coming in. And then we've started to take off now as the general sentiment in the community, a few more people are talking about this. I still think it's got a long way to go if they have a successful mainnet launch. And again, that's why I'm holding on to this one in my trading account, but I also own some long-term because I believe in this project. I'm really long-term, but I believe it can have another big run once they have that successful mainnet launch and a lot more people jump into this trade. So again, being aware of what's happening, I go over to their Reddit, 30 people online, only 3,000 subscribers. These are all these things that I use to build an idea that I'm early. If there's everyone talking about it and shilling it in a Facebook group, I'm not touching it. I know that I was too late. And last year, Cardano was probably a great example of that, where I didn't get in early and it goes to $1 very quickly, and you have to recognize that you should never chase. You have to realize if you're in early versus if you're in late and you're being one of the herd, you're the dumb money that's making the early investors rich. So having that plan, building your own style and strategy, sticking to your own rules, all that sort of thing is hopefully what I've taught you today. If you have liked that video, guys, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in. Cheers.